Hello, I was out doing my spraying for the cucumber beetles this morning. Thought I'd give you a little tour of the garden. So we'll start in one spot and I'll show you a couple different things. So I'll start in this spot right here. You can see these trellises that are up, and this was the section I originally planted our green beans in, because my plan was to train them up the trellis. They were going to be pole beans. They were the ones that the cucumber beetles originally wiped out, and so you can see those are the okra plants that I planted there instead. And none of them have bloomed yet, but there are a couple of them that are getting some really big buds on them. Then behind there you can see our tomato plants. They're all along that line there. And then right in front of me I have, these are some volunteer cucumber plants that came up where the beans had been. Figured since I had the trellises, I would just go ahead and train them up the trellises. And then we come over to a trombone squash plant. And this is one of the ones that really took off the most after I started spraying, and so it has really taken over this whole trellis. And then right here we have a volunteer tomato plant in that same area around the trellises. And then training up this trellis is where I transplanted some of my daughter's watermelon plants. And there's one of them, this is the furthest I've ever had a watermelon plant make it. Whenever I've tried them in the past, they've always gotten wiped out by bugs before it got to be this size. And there's a couple more little ones down in there that are just starting to put on some more leaves past the initial ones. So hopefully I'll be able to keep those going too. And then over there are the cucumber plants that I actually planted as opposed to the volunteer ones. You can kind of see with how much they've been getting sprayed, there's a little bit of the white stuff on there. And that's just the soap residue. But they're starting to grow and starting to put flowers on them. Then there is our rows of beets. They probably could be harvested at any time, but we're still letting them go to get a little bigger. And over here I have the lighter colored leaves are what are called white beets instead of red beets. And then over here were my lettuce rows, and I just let them go to seed. Hopefully they'll go to seed here pretty quick and replant themselves. Otherwise I'm going to have to tear them all out because I'm going to want to plant some lettuce there. And over here I have my sunflowers. They're all close to about 8 feet tall at this point. It's amazing how well they grow out here, but I guess that's why they call us the sunflower state. Right here is that one little bean plant I talked about that had survived. And if you look real close, you can see this is the bean on there that I was talking about the other day. I still think that's the only one on there, but you can see there's another flower down on there. So hopefully it'll be putting on some beans soon. Over here, these are my hot peppers or jalapenos. I've got, looks like, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 of those. Hopefully we will get to use those to make green tomato salsa at the end of the year. The last couple of years we've had some storms that have come through and ruined our green tomatoes, but that we've decided that's not going to happen this year. So hopefully the weather has hurt us and cooperates. This is the patch of summer squash. The far row over there is where the Magda squash that I was talking about are. Those are the ones that are our favorite. And then this row all along here is kind of a mix of scallop squash and some zucchini. You can see there's several little scallop squash in there. They're pretty close to being ready to harvest, so we might be doing that today so that Kendra can be making some scallop squash pickles while I'm gone for a couple days. There's another couple scallop squash over there. They're all over the place. And then there's a zucchini right down in there. And then all along that outside edge we have trombone squash mostly, but there's a couple other winter squash mixed in. We're getting another further in than I've ever gotten. I planted a variety called Burgess Buttercup, and I've never had any success with those. And I don't know if I'm going to or not, but at least I've gotten further with them than I ever have before. They've put on some female flowers. So here's the trombone squash from the other side. You can see there's one growing right there. There's a couple more in there somewhere. Then this is the tomatoes from the other side. And then over here we have a row. Through those weeds you can see some dill. And then back I have some basil in there too. Then growing all around that corn, I have some more winter squash, which I'll show you here in a minute. There's another little trombone squash growing right there. And then over here, I have one of the Burgess Buttercups that I was telling you about. Let's see if I can get it. There we go. And then right there, those are the cucumber beetles. There's both a striped one and a spotted one. They're both varieties of cucumber beetle. It rained this morning, so I hadn't got to spraying them quite yet, but that'll be next on the list. Then over here, like I said, there's more of the winter squash. A lot of what's growing over here is a squash called a green striped cushaw. That's what it looks like in there, if we get that out of the way. Kind of angles around like that. They're pretty fun. They have a very buttery texture to the squash, so they're kind of fun to eat that way. You can see, I think there's a couple more growing in there. Kind of hard to see through all the leaves, they have such big leaves. Then back behind, we have some corn stalks that are growing. Unfortunately, the cucumber beetles kind of damage those pretty good. We might be able to get a cob or two out of there, but they're growing back there. And then this is the sweet potato patch. They are doing quite nice. And over here, all the peppers. And we'll see if we can find a couple where they're starting to grow. There's one hanging right there. And then in these, we were noticing when we were looking yesterday, they're pretty interesting because instead of flopping down, they actually grow up. You can see them sticking up like that right there and right there. Then over here, those are, I know what those are banana peppers. I have 4 or 5 varieties growing. I don't know which they all are until they fully ripen up. So they're really starting to set on nicely now though. And then got a bunch of basil over here. We really like basil. It goes well with our tomatoes all the time. And then we also like to make some pesto sauce at the end of the year with what's left of it. And that's always nice. And over here we got some flowers. This is our little flower row. Some marigolds. The marigolds are completely volunteer from previous years. Seed. And then we've got some zinnias over there. And then over there just getting ready to bloom. There was a couple of them, but those are the cosmos. Planted those because Kendra really likes them. You can see how the winter squash plants are really taking over that spot over there. These things right here are parsnips that we never ended up harvesting last year, so I just let them go to seed. We'll see how all that turns out. If any of them end up growing, parsnips have a notoriously low germination rate. And then over here, my raspberries, they're in their 4th year. They should be getting ready to start blooming here soon. And then kind of rounding everything off, this is where I planted my new rows of green beans. I didn't have to plant them over by the lattices because these are bush green beans as opposed to pole green beans, so they won't grow nearly as high, and so they should be able to support themselves. But on these, That's about as big as my first planting of green beans got this year. And then they're way ahead of what my second planting had gotten to before the cucumber beetles got them. And when my first ones, when the leaves got to be this size, they were just full of holes from the cucumber beetles. And so the fact that there's solid leaves on there is hopefully a good sign for us. And that is what my garden looks like.